The Cold War was a The Cold War was a prolonged period of geopolitical tension that lasted roughly from 1947 to 1991 and involved primarily the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, along with their respective allies and ideological spheres of influence. Its origins trace back to the final years of World War II, when the wartime alliance between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union began to fracture due to fundamental ideological differences between capitalism and communism, mutual distrust, and disagreements about how Europe should be reorganized after the defeat of Nazi Germany. The Soviet system was based on the principles derived from the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, advocating a classless society with collective ownership of production, while the United States promoted liberal democracy, private property, and free market capitalism. During wartime conferences such as the Tehran Conference in 1943, the Yalta Conference in 1945, and the Potsdam Conference in 1945, Allied leaders negotiated the post-war political structure of Europe, but tensions quickly escalated when the Soviet Union began establishing communist governments throughout Eastern Europe, including in Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and Czechoslovakia. In 1946, former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill famously declared that an Iron Curtain had descended across Europe, symbolizing the ideological and political division between the communist East and the capitalist West. The Cold War formally intensified in 1947 when U.S. President Harry S. Truman announced the Truman Doctrine, which pledged American political, military, and economic assistance to countries threatened by communist expansion, initially focusing on stabilizing Greece and Turkey. Around the same time, the United States launched the Marshall Plan, a massive financial program that delivered more than $13 billion in aid to rebuild Western European economies devastated by the war, thereby strengthening democratic governments and reducing the appeal of communist movements. The Soviet Union rejected participation in the plan and compelled Eastern European states to do the same, further solidifying the divide between the two blocs. Tensions escalated dramatically during the Berlin blockade of 1948 to 1949, when the Soviet Union blocked all land access to the western sectors of Berlin in an attempt to force the Western Allies out of the city, prompting the United States and its allies to organize the massive Berlin airlift, which delivered food, fuel, and supplies to West Berlin for nearly a year until the blockade was lifted. In 1949, the Western Alliance formalized military cooperation through the creation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a collective defense pact including the United States, United Kingdom, France, and Canada, while the Soviet Union strengthened its influence over Eastern Europe and later formed its own alliance system. That same year, the USSR successfully tested its first atomic bomb, ending the American nuclear monopoly and initiating a dangerous global nuclear arms race in which both superpowers competed to develop increasingly powerful weapons capable of destroying entire cities and potentially humanity itself. The Cold War soon expanded into armed proxy conflicts, the first major one being the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. Which began when Communist North Korea, led by Kim Il-sung, invaded South Korea with the support of the Soviet Union, prompting military intervention by the United Nations, led primarily by the United States. During the conflict, the People's Republic of China, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, entered the war on the side of North Korea, resulting in massive casualties and a stalemate that ended with an armistice restoring the border near the 38th parallel. In the following decade, the competition between the superpowers extended into technological and military fields, including the development of thermonuclear hydrogen bombs that were hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bombs used during World War II, and the formation in 1955 of the Soviet-led military alliance known as the Warsaw Pact, which united Eastern Bloc states such as Poland, Hungary, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Bulgaria in opposition to NATO. Technological rivalry also manifested in the space race, which began dramatically in 1957 when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite, an achievement that shocked American policymakers and led to the establishment of NASA in 1958. Soviet prestige continued to rise in 1961 when cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit Earth aboard Vostok 1. But the United States regained symbolic leadership in space exploration when astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon during the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969.